ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gene, thank you so much for. Okay, let me start over. This is crazy. All right. Well, I am joined. Our guest today is my good friend Gene Epstein, who I have been so fortunate to know over the past few years, and he is going to be telling us everything about what happened with Gamestop. So Gene, I rely on you, like I said, to really help everybody understand what's going on here, because most people have no understanding of what we're talking about. We hear about the stock market, but beyond that, people have no idea what's going on. So maybe we should just start by you introducing us a little bit to yourself, Gene, like in a few words. Give us some feedback as to who you are.
Well, I was a senior economist at the New York Stock Exchange for nearly 14 years, and I was economics and books editor at Barron's Financial Weekly for 26 years. And so I definitely got my feet wet in the stock market and in finance, even though my topic was basically the broader economy, of which the financial markets are one part. I was never a financial journalist, but an economics journalist. But of course, I had to know a lot and learn a lot about finance because I worked for first a financial institution, the New York Stock Exchange, and then for a financial weekly, Barron's Financial Weekly. And so I love this story. I love this story mainly because I am a libertarian, and I do see it as a sort of a victory. It's a sort of a capitalist victory for the average person. And ironically, when you say so many people don't quite know what's going on, the irony is that seemingly a lot of people do know what's going on because they were involved in this social news platform at part of Reddit called the Wall Street Bets. Seemingly they have some idea of what they're doing, and we're talking about many people who aren't that rich, who are going up against. It's a David and Goliath story, and we libertarians, generally speaking, our default position is to root for the David versus the Goliath, and so it's very heartening. And they're using the tools of capitalism to fight back, and that's also heartening. Now, with all that said, there are a lot of ironies in this story as well, but still, my take on it is basically that it's exciting and heartening. They're using the tools of capitalism, and ironically, AOC, Anastasia, what's her name, Cortez, I forgot it. She's sort of
Cortez.
Repeat that. You give me her name. What's it? I call her AOC for short, and she is the Socialist Congress person in Brooklyn.
She thinks she's a socialist because I have a feeling she does not really know what socialism means. We'll be gentle with her by just saying she probably just wants the little people to win, hopefully.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I mean, I agree with you, of course, that she doesn't quite know what she means by socialism. However, it does seem as though she's a knee-jerk hater of anything capitalist, and so this is ironic that she is sort of like favoring these people and pretending that she knows something about the markets. So that's kind of interesting. That
Gene, again.
Yes.
Because just like she does not understand what socialism is, for her, with a straight face to say that she supports socialism means she doesn't know what socialism means. The same way, her being against capitalism means also she doesn't know what capitalism means. So that's why I'm very gentle with AOC. I just think she uses words she doesn't understand. And stands for things or against things she does not really understand. So
okay, I would think when she say, well, stock market, oh, come on, that's ugly, we have to shut down the stock market. But look, I appreciate your gentility, although of course she's talking about more congressional investigation, which ultimately, when the Congress investigates anything, they usually make matters worse. So I'm not in favor of that. But as you said, the point is that she is sort of taking her the side of the people who have launched this initiative via the Wall Street Bets forum, and so that's very nice up to a point. And so that's just one of the ironies of all this about her championing these people who are basically sort of using the tools of capitalism. So that's all good. But so that's broadly what the story is. But before we talk about the players, we have to talk about what I hope most of the people who through the Wall Street bets understand, that they went up against hedge funds, and we'll have to talk about who they are. Hedge funds are basically mutual funds for rich people. Generally speaking, you have to have at least $1 million in order for a hedge fund to be interested in your money. And that's really for regulatory reasons, that you have to have $1 million to be regarded as sort of financially sophisticated, where they can take risks and they can do interesting and creative things with your money, and where and they harness the best talent. The mutual funds are for the little guy, for you and me, unless you've got $1 million to spend. I don't know. I've got a little bit, but I really couldn't put all my money with a hedge fund. I'm just another mutual fund guy, and the mutual funds have all kinds of restrictions on how they can trade and what they can do, and so we are stuck with them. But meanwhile, the rich people get the hedge funds, which are, as I say, essentially mutual funds for rich people. And the point that I want to make there is that what's really happened then is that the little guy who's stuck with the mutual funds decided, the hell with that, we're going to band together via Reddit, and we're going to go up against the hedge funds. We're going to get into that game, and we don't have to go through the mutual funds. We're just going to do it on our own. And so that's another part of this that I like, and that's attractive to me. And in a sense, it's really a response to the regulator basically saying, oh, we're going to protect the little guy. You've got to just trade through mutual funds. And even though the returns are dismal, we've got to protect you against yourself, because after all, you're not sophisticated the way these big hedge fund guys are. But in fact, what the hedge fund guys did in this particular case was not that sophisticated, and I'll get to that in a bit. But now we have to understand, we've got the hedge funds, we've got the mutual funds, and we've got Reddit, which is just a social news platform, which has this subreddit forum called Wall Street Bets, and they concocted a plan. And what was their plan? And to go up against the hedge funds, and what did it have to do with what we call short selling? Well, this is what short selling is all about. Instead of buying a stock at 100 because you expect it to go to 150, because you're bullish on the stock, which is the way most of us think in terms of, and which is what mutual funds basically do. They just buy stock. The hedge funds can play it from both angles. They can also make a bet and profit if they expect the stock to decline. And they do this mainly via what is called short selling. And the short selling mechanism is something that we should understand, because it has a lot to do with what the Reddit Wall Street Bets forum concocted. If you and I are going to sell short, what we do is we look at the price at 100, and we arrange through our broker to borrow, let's say, 1,000 shares of the stock. In this case, the stock that was the main target was Gamestop. We'll get to why they thought that GameStop's price was going to go down, but let's deal with the mechanism. They take they borrow 1,000 shares of GameStop from somebody who owns GameStop, and they not only have to pay that person a fee to borrow. What's also interesting is that if the stock pays a dividend, they also have to make good on those dividends while they are borrowing the stock. So A borrows stock from B, and then you borrowed stock and you sell that stock for the 100 a share. You sell stock that you've borrowed for 100 a share. And so you've gained $100 a share. Now what's interesting to bear in mind is that B still thinks he holds that stock, still earning dividends, but that stock was borrowed and it was lent and was sold to C, and C is also holding the stock. So you've actually created 2,000 shares where there used to be 1,000 shares. But you've doubled the number of shares because B is still holding the stock, and so is C. A is still holding the stock, so is C. Sorry, but you're the short seller. You're B. Okay. Got that straight? Sorry. You're the short seller. Okay, so you sold the stock for $100 that you've borrowed, and then let's say all goes well and it goes down to 50. So then you've got to give back the stock that you borrowed. So you then give it back by buying the shares at $50. Given my scenario, it's all gone well because you're an intelligent short seller. You've borrowed it at 100, then sold it at 100, and then you've got to give it back to the person you borrowed it from, and you made the $50 profit. Remember, again, it was at 100, you borrowed it, sold it at 100, it's gone down to 50. You've got to replace the shares that you borrowed, and you buy them back at 50, and you've pocketed a $50 profit. And short selling, by the way, is a perfectly legitimate activity. Short sellers are often the objects of ridicule, as well as objects of disdain, because it seems very un-American to be bearish on a stock. But there I want to introduce the nuance. Short selling is actually a very worthy activity. If you think the stock is overpriced, it's a very worthy activity, and it's good that it happens. And so I don't. Therefore, I'm introducing some nuance. We said that the hedge funds did the shorting. They shorted the stock. I don't think that's an evil thing in itself. And one of the things I fear out of this is that the regulators are going to start putting clamps on short selling. But so bear that in mind. But now let's deal with what actually happened in particular with respect to GameStop. GameStop was the main target, although so was AMC. But AMC and GameStop seemingly were good targets for short selling. GameStop is in the business of running parlors where people play video games. And then so these parlors, especially now with COVID, but even pre-COVID, these parlors were suffering in terms of a decline in business because the video games can be played online. You can download them online. So their business model was beginning to become antiquated. In addition, and then especially then with the COVID lockdowns, it looked even worse for GameStop. So there was a very aggressive move on the part of the hedge funds to short GameStop. This and AMC, which is another interesting part of. So AMC, of course, is the big movie chain, and AMC is also suffering. So they were shorting AMC as well. But this is the part of it where they went overboard. Remember, I said that when you borrow stock from whoever you're borrowing it from, that you're creating additional shares. There was a point at which there were so many shares shorted against GameStop that it was like more than GameStop actually had outstanding. They were going so overboard. They were creating so many extra shares that they were really, if you'll excuse the expression, because this was an old expression I used to hear on Wall Street, they were shorting the shit out of it. That's what they used to say. Let's short the shit out of it, and that's what they were really doing, shorting the shit out of it. They had more shares. They shorted more shares than there were shares of GameStop. They were creating so many extra shares. They were flooding it. So, okay. So this is what they did. What, dear?
Gene, is that part legal? I mean, to get to a point.
Yes, it basically is. The point is, if I could continue with the math, but at least if we understand that you could easily create 2,000 shares where there used to be 1,000 shares. The 1,000 shares is still being held by the person you borrowed them from because they still have ownership rights and you're still making good on the dividends. And then you took those shares and you sold them to somebody else. So basically, it looks as though you proliferated the number of shares. There are now 2,000 outstanding. And so if you continue with that, if you follow the math, you actually can create more shares out there than there are that you've shorted than there are even shares outstanding. Have faith in this math. So therefore, they really were shorting the shit out of it. They were going way overboard, really trying to crush GameStop with all this shorting. So that's why they looked vulnerable. They did the same to AMC. But go ahead.
And Gene, to understand, the more they do that, the more they the more they create extra shares. The more they're able to bring the price down.
Precisely, because
there's a correlation.
Precisely, they're clobbering exactly, and because then the reason why it's important to understand how they're increasing the supply gigantously is then you think, well, supply and demand. If you're doubling the number of shares outstanding, then the supply, you're selling and selling more and more that you're borrowing. You keep borrowing shares, keep selling them, so you're really clobbering the stock. So the short seller clobbers the stock. Now, that's why I want to introduce the nuance and say that that the short sellers really are sometimes good. They're good vigilantes in the stock market. There is an awful lot of crazy bullish attitudes on the part of investors, and the short sellers are actually relatively valuable vigilantes in the stock market because they can indeed put a brake on the ability of a stock to be overpriced. And that's something that we should bear in mind about the irony in all this. And in fact, to digress for a moment, the movie The Big Short and the book The Big Short was about the courageous short sellers that shorted mortgages in 2008. And because they thought the mortgages were overpriced. So therefore, short sellers actually perform a service. But in this way, they really were shorting the shit out of GameStop, and they were shorting the shit out of AMC because there were so many shares that they were proliferating, so many sales that they were issuing. So now let's get to the next part. As we said, if you've shorted a stock, you ultimately have to cover your short. That's where we get, you're covering your shorts, and that's where we get a little bit racy here, but it says covering the shorts means, of course, that you have to buy the stock back because you ultimately have to return the stock that you borrowed. And so that means then that if you're looking at a stock that where there's more shares out shorted than there even are shares that the company had in the first place, then you see that's a lot of buying that those people are going to have to do. Those shorts, they've got to buy a lot of stock back in order to cover their shorts. And so that makes them vulnerable. So that sets the stage for the plan that was concocted at the subreddit Wall Street Bets Forum. Let's organize and let's buy GameStop and let's buy AMC. Let's send a fortune of money collectively. We're putting all our money into buying GameStop and buying AMC. And so why are we doing it? We're going to drive the price up. And we're going to make it more and more difficult for these short sellers to operate. Instead of allowing them to hammer the price, we're going to have enough financial firepower to counter that and to drive GameStop and AMC to the moon. That's the other expression. This is going to the moon. That's what they did. They drove it to the moon. And so now think about the poor short seller, those poor hedge fund guys. Well, those poor in the sense of having their plot foiled for them, their strategy foiled. They're now finding that instead of GameStop collapsing in value or AMC collapsing in value, now it's suddenly getting driven up to double, triple, quadruple, quintuple its normal price. And so what are you going to do? So now going back to another, you shorted it at 100. I'm just making up. You shorted it at 100, and now it's gone to 2,500. This is and you're supposed to make money by buying back at 50, and now in order to buy back, you've got to pay 2,500. And so how are you going to pay back? You've got to replace that stock. You've got to buy it back and cover your shorts. And now you're in a bit of a bind, and that's what's called a short squeeze. You're getting squeezed. And so a good part of the reason why GameStop and AMC have now been rising in price is because the desperate hedge funds in a short squeeze have been buying back the stock at inflated prices in order to limit their losses. So the buying interest, go ahead, yes? They sold it at 100 to make up that number, and now it's gone to 2,500, and they're going to say, oh, Gavolt, it could go to 5,000. So let's cover our shorts. So therefore, that's what they have been doing, and at the same time, the Reddit investors have been driving it up. So the point to make here, at least, is that while I'm for short selling, there's all this nuance here. I have nothing against rich people and hedge funds. Hedge funds are just mutual funds for rich people. I think it's unfair that they get all the talent working for them, but then this talent went overboard, was overconfident. But the reason why they get all the talent working for them is because of the regulator, because the regulator will not allow this talent to work for the mutual funds, keeps all kinds of constraints on it. So I don't blame the hedge fund people for doing. But go in, yeah.
Why would they not? Why would the regulators not? Why are they currently not allowing the talent to work for mutual funds?
Well, there were all kinds of restrictions. Look, in this case, we might say that it's the cost of good intentions. There is that's the best explanation I can provide for it. I don't know if that it's purely. We haven't used the word crony capitalism yet, but I don't know that I don't know there's any evil intent. It's just that the idea is that you and me, Magatte, with our mere, whatever we have in our piggy bank and whatever we have in the mattress, that we're too stupid to be able to take risks in the market, and therefore the people who manage our money they can't leverage. They're discouraged from short selling. They can't take the kinds of risks that a hedge fund might take in order to make some money, because we're too stupid to be able to. We're not financially sophisticated, and since we're financially naive, they don't want the fast buck artists to take advantage of us. So we've got to go into the mutual funds, which have constraints on how they can trade. And so and also the payouts. The hedge fund guys, by the way, have a motivation. The hedge fund guys amazingly, they make a lot. The hedge fund managers get 20% of the profits. That's illegal in a mutual fund. The mutual funds can only take a fee, but there's no inducement for a really talented trader to work for a mutual fund because he can't take a share of the profits. So what's funny is that here the rich people are giving their traders a 20% share, and they're doing better than the mutual funds. Then that place a limit, because obviously it's an incentive, because it's a deal. If you can't perform for us, we're just going to take our business elsewhere. But we're happy to give you 20% of the profits if you can do well for us. That's the hedge fund rule. It's verboten in the mutual funds. And so again, it seems to come from the philosophy that we little guys are too stupid to put our money with the aggressive traders, and therefore we've got to get stuck with the mutual funds. So that's nearly as I can figure that motivates the regulator in this way. But then the broad perspective then is that the little guy via Wall Street bets decided, again, the hell with the mutual funds. I'm going to take on the hedge funds at their own game, and they foiled them at their own game again, precisely because the hedge funds were just had shorted the shit out of it. They got way too greedy. They were trying to clobber it with their overwhelming short positions, and the little guy got wind of it and is putting a squeeze on them. Yeah.
So when you say they got wind of it, so can you walk us through maybe a little bit more? Because thank you so much. It was very helpful to be a little bit more in the head of hedge fund managers, but. Yeah. Here, can you walk us through a little bit more, maybe the mind of these Redditors and what they've done? How do you think they've seen what was going on and what was going to happen? You said they got wind of it.
Well, I think that actually I have not done the basic research in looking up what exactly was being discussed in the Wall Street Bets forum. The only thing I'm inferring is that they saw that the short interest in that's what we call the short interest in Gamestop and in AMC. There are a couple of other examples, but AMC and Gamestop are the most notorious examples. Is so huge that, and they understood how short selling works. They understood the notion of the short squeeze. They just saw those numbers. The short interest is bigger than the actual shares outstanding, and they saw that means that they're going to have to buy back all of these shares. Now, I could say that I never specifically covered the financial markets as an economics columnist, but I knew that too. I mean, you basically learn the rudiments of short selling and what it amounts to and what the short interest is all about. by just basically just absorbing these insights. And so it didn't take a lot of smarts to recognize that if you could organize a short squeeze, you could do something. And I guess what they knew, which of course I was completely unaware of because I don't follow trading that closely. They knew that through Wall Street Bets Forum, they had so many followers that they could organize the financial firepower in order to get this done. That's the funny part. Now, the next part of it has to do with the speculation about what's motivating them. They've been called the white supremacists, because they're trading against the hedge funds. They've been called every name in the book. I don't know if you noticed the funny one where a former SEC commissioner likened their attack on the hedge funds to the attack on the Capitol. It's the rising of the Trumpistas. I know maybe there are a bunch of Trump supporters who just want to get back at the hedge funds, that blame maybe the scapegoating the hedge funds for the 2008 debacle. It's certainly, it may well be that if we met a lot of these people, we may not quite share their hatred of hedge funds or their hatred of the establishment. We might agree that these guys, these people who are doing it. I mean, I haven't interviewed any of them. I haven't come out of the closet. Maybe you want to do an interview on a handful of them who've done it. I haven't met these people, so there's only only conjecture as to what is really motivating them. But
you see,
go ahead.
You see, not to interrupt you on that, but you see, to me, this is so, it's like such deja vu,
Yeah.
When the big guys, and I've got nothing against hedge fund managers, but in this case, let's call them the Goliaths compared to the Davids, but the Redditors are. So, but you see, it just really bothers me when, if the big guys do something like this, well, very big guys, and maybe we'll just say they're motivated by greed and everything. But when a little person supposedly also tries to go for money, try to make money, we refuse. It's almost like we can't call them greedy people. So the next term is going to be something more, maybe even worse, which is in this case the white
supremacists.
White supremacists, a fascist, or something like that. So this idea that the virtue of small people, like money is always bad, and we understand that big people want to go for it, but the minute we see a little person that supposedly wants to go for money, it must not be about the money, it must be about something else. Like the idea that little people don't want nor need to make money. What is this? See, for me, that is really what bothers me. It's once again, what that showcases, the fact that we choose here, they must be everything but regular everyday people who are just saying, look, it's not fair. They get to make, these calculations. I happen to have a brain to make them, and my friends are rallying. Let's go make it, and we make the same amount of money as these people, if not more. How come when little people want to do that, it must be evil type people? So the fact that money is always attached to evil.
Well, you make a good point. Although, of course, we have certainly the crazy charge of white supremacy, or the again, it's amazing. There really is a video of, I don't know how this was captured. A former SEC commissioner, she's actually a woman. She's saying this reminds me of the attack on the Capitol. I mean, it's just crazy. But I mean, again, where's her logic? This is just playing the capitalist game. This is a short squeeze. This is a tactic that's used. It is a tactic, but obviously in the first place, the way they shorted the shit out of these two companies, and there were other companies they did this to as well, who seemed to go way overboard. So it's just games played on Wall Street. But as you granted, and we both granted earlier, you can't accuse AOC of this. So she's on the side of the little guy. So therefore, it's not a universal delusion, this idea that little people have no right to make money. So AOC is not on that side. The left wingers seem to be on that side. Glenn Greenwald, who is a guy we like in many ways, but then he's on Tucker Carlson, and he seems to be on the side of the little guy too. But the next thing he says is, why should hedge funds even exist? We should shut them down. I mean, so we can't really trust these people. They don't see the nuance either. But
so that's what I want to talk to you about. You who sees the nuance. Gene, I'm a little bit worried about what this might mean in the future. So what do you think is going to happen? What do you think the regulators are going to try to do. What do you think is going to happen? Are we going to say, look, oh, wow, this actually seems to be a fair game. If nothing else, we made a mistake in thinking that supposedly the little people can't, they have to be stuck to the mutual funds and the hedge funds, you know? Are we going to say, wow, actually they can take care of themselves. Let's free them up, let's free them up. They can do this. Or are we just going to, in the guise of, you know what I mean? So what do you think is going to happen? Because
I'm going to get to, I guess, the tough question, which is you're asking me the impossible question to read the mind of these crazy regulators and politicians and exactly how they'll respond. I mean, the one thing at least to bear in mind is that this is a mini bubble. I want to make a couple of points that about the end game, which in a way isn't so pleasant. If you came in early on Wall Street Bets Forum, and you bought it at the lows, it seems as though you're going to do very well. There was apparently one guy who was he's claiming he's principled. There are a few people who've come out of the closet on this. I think he risked about $10,000 that he had, and now his holdings are worth over $1 million. And you'd think, well, if you turn 10,000 into $1 million, don't you want to take your profits? No, he's holding. He refuses. He says, I want to keep giving these people pain. I'm not gonna sell. I'm not gonna cash in. So there's a lot of animosity, and in a way, you and I have to acknowledge that it's ironic that you're making the hedge funds the whipping guy, even though you're playing a fair game. But I want to get into another nuance, which is certainly Gamestop, and in particular, cannot be maintained at these prices.
No.
Something's going to happen, and therefore people are coming in late. If there are people coming in late through Wall Street Bets, I think they're going to get hurt, although it doesn't appear that people are really putting a whole lot of their money into this. So I trust that nobody's going to really get devastated. So bear in mind that the game is a very odd one right now. As I say, I interviewed a guy who's very perceptive, and I asked him, why did the stock rise over the last week? We don't even quite know. Is it because the hedge funds are covering their shorts and they're buying and buying, they're covering their shorts, they have to buy? Or is it because more people are coming in via Wall Street Bets to keep buying? Actually, the other part of the story, which I guess I should complete with before I get to your question about what might ultimately happen, the other part of the story is that Robin Hood, as it's ironically called, which has been the main brokerage house through which these trades are made, declared last week that they have to place a limit on the trading. And then it was a little suspicious that it was only a few days later that they said it's because the clearinghouse is imposing some restrictions on them. I don't know whether Robin Hood, as the libertarian joke has been going, the Robin Hood is supposed to, steal from the rich and give to the poor, and Robin Hood seems to be on the side of the rich because they're limiting these tradings. But the irony is, though, that in a way, if Robin Hood is limiting the trades right now, it's probably not a bad thing, because if there are latecomers now coming into Wall Street Bets, it's probably not I could say to you and me, Magatte, this is not a good time to get on the bandwagon. That train left the station. You and I missed out on the $1 million because we just weren't reading Wall Street Bets. So, and probably it's too late to to break your piggy banks and put your money into it, because it's probably not a good price to buy at. But also, I want to get into another interesting irony, because I love this part of the story. AMC, which is the big movie theater chain, and I as a guy who loves to go to the movies was just weeping for the fact that the big multiplexes are suffering because of COVID. And because of the COVID lockdowns, I should say, they're suffering, and so they were shorting the shit out of AMC as well, and then AMC became the target of Wall Street Bets. So the Wall Street Bets people bid AMC up, and now I guess the hedge funds have got to continue to bid it up even further. And then what happened to AMC was that they had bonds outstanding that they had to pay, but the bonds could be exercised at a certain price, and now all those bonds have been liquidated at the higher price, and now the bonds are now bought AMC stock. So the interesting irony is that AMC theater chain has been rescued from all its bond obligations by the fact that its price got bid up. initiated, of course, by Wall Street bets. So, of course, I'm happy that this theater chain seemingly will survive because of all this craziness. So that's another irony that came out of this, that actually the course of, so to speak, movie-going history has been changed because of the initiative taken by Wall Street bets. But getting back to your question, I want to answer an easier part of it. The one thing I like about this outcome is the following, that if we just let the game happen, if the regulators would simply leave hands off, first of all, recognize that this is not a, this is not a, I forget the term of art for it. This is not a major bubble in the market. This is not an environmental crisis. It's a limited bubble. It's not, if a few people lose, or the hedge funds lose, there won't be any ramifications for the economy. You can't make up that excuse. You know, when Alan Greenspan rescued a hedge fund in the 90s, he made up the excuse that oh, I've got to rescue this hedge fund because if they go bust, then the world's going to go bust. You know, long-term capital management, if you remember who they were. You know, no, the numbers are not large enough to justify some kind of insane excuse that we've got to rescue, we've got to intervene because otherwise this is going to take down the economy. It's not major in the stock market. It's basically an interesting sideshow. So they don't have that excuse. But the outcome that I would like to see is this, that the warning to the hedge funds from now on is that you can't get greedy. Try shorting the shit out of a stock, and you're going to attract countervailing buying from Wall Street bets. You know, if you want to short a stock, that's good. But you better, but if you see that stock already has a lot of short interest against it, then maybe you ought to back off and not get greedy. Short some other stock, but don't short to the point where it attracts the countervailing purchases. So therefore, I think this is this now. It's really that ultimately any sort of abuse or any craziness that happens in the market, if you just let it happen, you'll find it's a profitable opportunity for some countervailing person. You sent me this long thing from what's his name? I forget the guy's name, the famous CNBC guy, on manipulating the market. He's talking about a game he played. Did you see that video you showed me?
I did. Yes.
I couldn't follow every little strategy. He thinks he's such a brilliant manipulator. The fact of the matter is that, and he's talking about the bozo journalists.
I was trying to help you.
What's his name? What was that?
I was trying to help you by sending it to you. But you know, Gene, what you're saying here is, and this is where I am hoping that people, for once, can put their sometimes misguided emotions to the side and realize how, you know, because right now we are in a free market, like minus the government having said, no, but minus the government saying little people, and again, I use that word not because I'm being pejorative or...
well, sure.
But you know, it's like David versus Goliath.
You and I are little people. Yeah, go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead.
So right now, you know, the way it is, like, as you said, if we don't touch it too much, then finally the signal was sent to the Goliaths that, fine, go ahead and try and make as much money as you want, but there is almost like self-controlling factor here. But that's what you call in this case. I guess you call it the greed. But basically, so what I'm afraid of is all the people who still don't even see that the how the system can actually self-regulate itself if you do not mess with it too much, right? Because you know what I'm saying. So anyway, but I'm very worried that there.
Well, that's precisely the point. That indeed, what interests me, by the way, is that putting on a short squeeze somehow or other didn't occur to another hedge fund. I don't know if these guys are pals with each other. I don't know. I mean, but there's so many hedge funds out there. It's very difficult to believe that there's such a collusion. The fact is that the thing that amuses me as well is that this countervailing force against shorting the shit out of a company and really clobbering it to the point where your victory is just immense, that it had to come from a Wall Street Bets forum, that it came from the little guy organizing, that this strategy, the countervailing strategy, came from them. But just as you indicate, and just as I'm reflecting, the fact is that the market found a solution. So it's a warning now to the hedge funds that this is, of course, if you have wisdom that transcends what AOC has, wisdom that transcends the knowledge of a Graham Greenwald, that we found a solution. We found a way in which a company can be protected against short sellers who go overboard, who clobber its stock. This arose from resentment. We don't know. It rose from forces that we don't necessarily endorse, but it's a good thing. And my hope, of course, is that not many people through Wall Street Bets are going to lose a lot, that the market will settle, and that this will be an interesting episode, and that in the future then we will see short selling, but probably the hedge funds will have learned their lesson. So in a way, I ducked your question because your question is, now what will the regulators do? You would just echo my point that because I then resort to this hope that the regulators will simply back off and recognize. Now, what I really hope the regulators will do is obviously shut down the SEC, shut down all your regulation, because the history shows you've done far more harm than good. It seems like both the cost of good intentions as well as the cost of bad intentions, you've done no good at all. If there are any aberrations or any attempt on that guy Jim Cramer, that's his name, of course, Cramer, he's outlining this diabolical scheme by which he's manipulating the markets. And so obviously, if somebody is at the poker table and he's manipulating and he's bluffing, then usually there are other players who know how he's bluffing and can learn from it and can profit from his bluff. That's really what Kramer's talking about. Kramer's talking about being able to manipulate people who are too stupid to recognize what he's up to. Well, if we have the little guy who is supposed to be real stupid, the Wall Street Bets forum, foiling the brilliant hedge funds, then we probably can have some faith that whatever Jim Cramer does in the future, especially since he's shooting his mouth off of what he does, that people will figure out that the way to make money is to pick off Jim Cramer, and that's so often what happens in the market. There's so many different angles and so many different people who give it a thought. The market will work it out. So what I do hope, again, ducking your question, what will the regulator do? But what I hope the regulator will do is I hope the regulator will say we abolish all rules against mutual funds. Obviously, there are plenty of people who are risk averse, plenty of people who who probably would like the deal the mutual funds offer. They just want to buy an index fund. They don't want to pay a whole lot of fees. Index funds are very popular, and that's fine. And so the market will settle. There will be people who will be taken advantage of. There always are. When there's greed on the part of the average investor, by the way, and greed on the part of the fast buck artist, there will always be bad outcomes. But by and large, the market creates the best outcome you can hope for. And when the regulator gets involved, the combination of corruption and stupidity and usually means the outcomes are bad. It means that you rescue long-term capital management. It means that you make it hard for the little guy to make any money by clamping down on mutual funds. It means that you favor the rich people. So all kinds of outcomes are simply bad. It means you have a crazy former SEC commissioner who accuses these people of likening these people to those who stormed the Capitol and committed violence. So again, it's the same old story that yes, we understand that there are dishonest people on Wall Street, but whoever told us and who can ever convince us that there are philosopher kings who can run the show and make it all right? If there are dishonest people in Wall Street, there are plenty of crooks in Washington and at the SEC, plenty of opportunists who are just going to do more harm than good. So that's what I hope for. But I tend to think that this will blow over. If you're actually asking me what I predict, I'll stick my neck out and make a dumb, naive prediction. It seems as though this isn't such a threat. It isn't huge numbers. One assumes that the Biden administration wants to wreck us in so many other ways that they're not going to think in terms of this way. Probably it won't gain a lot of attention, and it will blow over, and it will have a good outcome. It's just unfortunate for me that people can't understand that hedge funds are not the enemy. Short selling is not the enemy. This is just a great moment in which the little guy outsmarted the big guy.
And that's the thing. I think for me, it's more what I would have wanted for the lesson of the story to be. The lesson of the story to be to remind people, everyday people, of their power. You know, when they come together. I guess you were calling it collectivism earlier, but this idea that little people are defenseless, and that we, the government institutions, has to come out and protect them from left and right, protect them. It's just nonsense. So I personally, I would love for the story, for the lesson of the story to be, no matter that you are a David and facing a Goliath, there is always a way out for the Davids. But as long as the Davids have the freedom, you know, to do what they seek out to do, and also including organizing with other Davids. So I would love for the story to be that, especially in a time when we're making us always feel that, you know, there's.
Well, also, I pick up on your point and actually broaden it and say that I obviously you and I are both disheartened by a lot of what's been happening on the internet, a lot of it, what Twitter has done and Facebook and so on. But still, I do feel that being a lot older than you and living through the period pre-internet and post, I do think that it's a better time. Clearly, with the rise of Amazon, there's been a lot of consumer empowerment. You can shop around for prices. You don't have to travel around the area to price a good. You can just, it's a click away. You can see what your cheapest deals are. There's been consumer empowerment, and probably it's hard to imagine how the Wall Street Bets Forum could have arisen pre-internet. It certainly, the existence of the internet has made it possible. And so that's at least another win for the internet, and why on balance, I think the rise of the internet has been a good thing for us all. And in this case in particular, in making it possible for the little guy to organize collectively and to take on the big guy.
For sure. So let us just hope that people, that's the lesson that they take, and they feel a renewed sense of self-agency, right? There's no Goliath that's big enough, that's so big that you can't take it down.
Yes, and that's broader. I mean, that's why. I mean, the other part of the story is crowdfunding, is all the ways in which people can raise money on the internet, where independent people can become journalists on the internet. It's given a rise to an awful lot of individual ventures, and so this is another manifestation of it that is really heartening. And ironically, you were interested in crony capitalism, which, as you know, your significant other prefers my word, crapitalism, the contraction for crony capitalism. Well, I'm sorry, but
we use it all the time. We've made it famous by.
You allow vulgarity on your show, and I did use that expression, short the shit out of it, which is an old Wall Street term, which is what they did. Crapitalism. So in fact, we have not really mentioned crony capitalism, and in a way, it's not really central to the story. The crony capitalism, again, being the unholy alliance between powerful capitalists and powerful companies. The only way in which I guess it's been a part of it, it's I guess when the former SEC commissioner made this remark, or when others have made these remarks, somehow or other, as you say, when they somehow believe it's okay for the hedge funds to make money, but not okay for the little guy to do so, they are threatening a crony capitalist move against the little guy. They're going to plot against it, and I don't know. The aspect of the crony capitalism part of it is that there is a suspicion that Robinhood has shut down the trading because they're in cahoots with the crony capitalists. But Robinhood is using some excuse, and I can't comment. Robinhood is claiming that the volatility and the high price have made it hard for them. And so I will leave that to one side. I would say maybe Robinhood has been threatened or bribed into making it difficult for these trades to happen. Maybe not. But then, as I say, the irony is that probably the timing is not bad, that Robinhood is making it a little bit difficult, because I do want to discourage the late comers from this market anyway. So I've tried to exhaust the ways in which this is a crony capitalist or capitalist story. It's limited so far as a capitalist story, and hopefully, and you and I hope it will remain so. Yeah.
No, on that note, I'm very much with you, Gene, on that.
Yeah.
But again, we will see what they do.
Yeah.
Again, for me, I just hope that the story of the lesson of the story was maybe stay out of it, regulators, for a while here.
Yeah.
You know, we always find a way to figure it out among ourselves.
Yeah.
But I'm just, so.
Think of it as a happy outcome. Absolutely. Well, I guess we would,
Any last thought or comment?
Gene? No last thoughts or comments. I'm just happy that AMC got rescued out of this, and that we can go to the movies, and hopefully now that Trump has been dumped, and so now they've dumped Trump, and they've wrecked the economy, and they've dumped Trump, and now they've got to worry about their tax base. Hopefully they will lift the lockdowns, and we can all, and you and I can actually meet again, and I can have my Soul Forum I'm going down to Florida to have a Soul Forum, so be there. John Mackey, you said you might be able to come, or actually by the time you broadcast this, maybe the debate will have happened already. So, but my Soul Forum is going to Florida on April 18th and on April 18th, and on February 18th. We're also going to Pork Fest at the end of June. So because we want to have a physical debate. My Soul Forum is a debate society. We have one-on-one debates. There will be John Mackey in February. I will be debating another socialist in April in Florida. If you go into thesoulforum.org, you can buy tickets to all our events. And also, if you're a podcast listener, you want to listen to all our 50 debates, many of them very current debates on many topics, at the Soul Forum Debates podcast, the Soul Forum Debates podcast, where you can listen to me debating a number of topics and others as well. So that's my plug for my ventures. Thank you very much.
And you're one of my favorite debaters. I love it. How you never just let go. And
thank you, dear.
I think one thing that people might not know, but I'm sure they heard it as they heard you talk, is very much, regardless of the labels we give ourselves, where you and I really connect is in this commitment and this devotion to supposedly the little people. I know we are rooting for folks, to rise up. So,
and back at you, what you stand for and what you've furthered is, of course, I quote you all the time. Sometimes I just steal your line. If I can't fire you, I can't hire you. Most of the time I credit you, as my friend Magatte has said. And of course, you stand for so many things that are so important, and you bring an enormous contribution to the liberty movement. So back at you.
Thank you so much, Gene. Sure. I appreciate you. I appreciate your work. Please carry it on, and we hopefully see you in Florida in person in February. If not, I will not miss it in April.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. Talk to you soon then, dear. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks. Bye, Gene.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.